Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ilse de Lange. I'm at Stellenbosch University Library Service, and I would like to welcome you to the 5th session of the Symposium, both to those in the audience and those who will be attending virtually. Now, before proceeding, we've had a lovely dinner with EBSCO last night, sponsored by them, and I would like us to give them a big round of applause. Our theme for this morning is the impact of COVID-19 on library services. Nothing can be more topical, and I certainly am looking forward to hear our speakers' contributions on this. Before our tea break at 10:30, we shall have 4 presentations with 5 speakers. After tea, we shall have our 6th speaker of the morning, followed by a panel discussion. May I request that you prepare your questions and comments to our speakers so that they may respond to them during the discussion, which will be after our last speaker and before the panel discussion. Now to our speakers. Our first 2 speakers are Elizabeth Moll Willard, Faculty Librarian for Agri-Sciences at Stellenbosch University, and Sibongiseni Mrwashu, Faculty Librarian for Science at the University of the Western Cape. Now, I need to put this into context. Until recently, Sibu has also been a faculty librarian at Stellenbosch, which is where the collaboration on the topic started. Sibu will start us off, then we will switch to Elizabeth's presentation, which will be virtual, but she won't be in the virtual room, and then Sibu will conclude. Over to Sibu.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, and I hope everybody is well and healthy. Okay, I'll get right into it. So, when Elizabeth and myself were given the task of looking at what impact COVID-19 had on the services that the library offered, because of time constraints, and we were both trying to wrap around our heads on what was actually happening at home at Stellenbosch University Library at the time. So this presentation focuses on what was happening with the services that were offered before and during COVID. So I'm going to go into the introduction, which is just to allude to information literacy and media literacy, what it is, the framework and the elements surrounding it. And then Elizabeth is going to virtually talk about the information literacy at Stellenbosch and the trainings, and then I will then step on the impact of COVID and the conclusion. Okay, there we go. So in the introduction, I'm gonna talk about the information literacy framework, the 7 elements of the digital literacies, and the Feekery Model. So, briefly, as stated there, information literacy is not only about being able to read and write, it also informs the client or informs information literacy at a contextual level, that people must be able to find information, put context to it, analyze it, be able to produce media content when using that those tools and content, and also to critically analyze the information that they are looking for. And this was a paper by Lynn et al. The reason why I like this one, instead of only looking at the aspect that a person must be able to read and write, they must be able to find information. Upon finding information, they must know that it is credible, they must be able to evaluate that, and furthermore, they must be able to use that information responsibly to produce a research paper or an assignment. So the 7 elements of digital literacies, as shown on the screen. There's media literacy, which speaks to critically reading and creatively producing academic and professional communications. And as you can see, also information literacy, where people need to find, interpret, evaluate, and manage, and actually share information, which was actually a huge thing during COVID-19, especially at the beginning of it, with all the fake news that were happening. And also career identity management, managing a digital reputation, and we know how important this is for universities and also companies at large, and also the ICT literacies to adopt and adapt using digital devices, using various digital platforms to make sure that you actually go into the learning of the skills and making sure that you produce a digital scholarship into into the higher education space, and also to groom undergraduates into postgraduate learners all the way through to research people or lecturers. So the Feekery model, I think, developed between 2017 and 2018. It looks at information literacy at the core, and then it has your academic literacy, and then that will be at a classroom level, at the lecture level, at subject matter content, and the disciplinary literacy itself, it interlinks there, and scholarly communication. And you've got adult and professional literacy. So now we're thinking of the learner or the student post-university when they're actually into the working world, and we've got digital and media literacies there. What I find interesting, where all of those circles intersect, you have your research, critical analysis, creativity and innovation, connectedness, evaluation, search skills, and ethics. And these are some of the topics that were spoken of this week at the symposium, which alludes to the fact that information literacy then might be the actual start of how we make sure that we have ethically sound researchers and students who produce quality information while using our resources in an ethical manner. And they also produce critically sound research as well. Okay. Elizabeth is going to come in now.
At Stellenbosch University Library and Information Service, the Information Literacy Training Framework sets out guidelines of what an information literate person is. It sets out the mission of the Library and Information Service as the following. The Library and Information Service provides leadership in developing the essential information literacy skills and knowledge of the academic community. The Information Literacy Program promotes critical thinking and equips individuals for lifelong learning. In partnership with academic colleagues, the library enhances curricula and creates learning environments which support the teaching and learning and research and innovation strategies of the University of Stellenbosch. It goes further and sets out standards of what an information literate person is able to do. At Stellenbosch University Library and Information Service, and it covers the information literacy training framework from starting out guidelines of what an information literate person is. Using responsibly, it says storing.
Apologies about that.
There are 5 standards set out, and it covers the information searching process from starting out, finding, evaluating, using responsibly, and storing and communicating information. It goes further and elaborates on the purpose for the standard and also outlines what the learning outcome will look like. This framework helps guide the trainings offered by the library to ensure that these are brought into line with the standards. An example is in the first standard, where the student recognizes the need for information and determines the extent. The library offers a literature search strategy training that taps into the standard by exposing students to methods to define their information need, the different resources that are available to meet this need, and how to reevaluate their need throughout their searching. You can also see that this training also speaks to the second and the third standard. In this way, the framework is used to fulfill the mission of the library to develop the information literacy skills and knowledge on campus. But what do these types of trainings look like? 2 of these trainings, module-specific and generic, speak to group training opportunities, while library guides and one-on-one are individual training opportunities. Module-specific trainings, as you can see here, are done by faculty librarians and linked to a specific course in a faculty. It can be assignment-based or just a general session, but it usually encompasses multiple topics in one session, such as searching effectively and the use of a reference manager. Generic trainings, in contrast, are linked to a specific topic, such as using a reference manager, and are open to all students. These generic sessions form part of the library's yearly training calendar on campus. Both faculty librarians and specialist librarians conduct the generic trainings dependent on the topic, but both of these group trainings are usually a once-off training opportunity. Looking to the individual trainings now, library guides give an We can see the difference in content if we look at an example module-specific training. This was a general library training session I conducted this year for Animal Health 342, so third-year undergraduate students. You can see three broad spheres are covered: general library orientation or basics, research, and reference management, which I put under writing. We can map these to the information literacy standards and see that multiple standards are touched on. In fact, the only standard not involved here was communication. But if I had included academic writing tips or assistance, which I do for fourth-year student trainings that I offer, then communication would also be covered, and all 5 information literacy standards would be met in one training. Taking in comparison, a generic training offered by the library called Find Trustworthy Information on Google and Google Scholar, we can see through the contents here that the emphasis is on one topic. Mapping it to the standards, as we did with the module-specific one, we can see that only 2 of the standards are met here. It's important to note that this isn't a gap in the training offered, as the library's training calendar overall includes other generic trainings that speak to the other standards. Rather, this does mean that students get an in-depth approach of specific standards, and it entices them to attend more of the generic training opportunities. Library guides at SU libraries are done using the LibGuides platform. They are created as a self-directed learning resource, meaning that students are able to use them to teach themselves, irrespective of whether they have attended any library training opportunities in the past. Because of the way the platform is structured, multiple topics can be covered, and the framework is possible to be fully covered. Just as with the trainings, there are 2 main types of library guides: faculty or departmental guides, and generic guides. This is an example of a faculty guide related to law and government publications, and you can see here the wide range of different topics, from covering all the different resources in detail, to referencing assistant, to academic skills and evaluating sources. In this way, it shows how this self-directed resource is able to meet all 5 standards of the information literacy framework. A generic library guide can be linked to something like how to use a reference manager, or, in this example, how to find, access, and use information effectively. This guide is crafted specifically to set out assistance according to the information literacy framework, and you can see that reflected on the different menu items. A final type of training is the one-on-one consultations. These are done through appointments with the relevant librarians, usually faculty librarians. Dependent on the student's need, it can cover simply how to access a resource, to how to conduct a systematic review, to using specific software like reference managers. Although these trainings do not perhaps cover a group at a time, they are nevertheless still valuable sessions in which information literacy skills are being taught.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Now, looking at the COVID-19 impact of what the services that my colleague had spoken about, the library guide, the group training sessions, the one-on-one meetings, most of these things happen inside the library. And what would happen, we would have a training session with computers. We would have one person in front who will teach the students, and there will be one on the floor to deal with the technical difficulties that might arise. Now this needed to shift to happen online, and it happened from various geographical areas. We had a student who was based in the rural Eastern Cape, rural Limpopo, rural KZN, CBD Cape Town, and somebody else maybe even from outside of South Africa. And we still had to deliver the same type of service we would if they were in a physical space with us. So digital learning happened online. And fortunately, because there were already tools in place, such as the LibGuides, your teams, we were able to facilitate training in those spaces. And what also COVID impacted on was plagiarism and copyright infringement. What had happened this one time when I was giving a training session with my colleague, Peter, he was administering the content. I was looking at the technical side of things. If a person, maybe they lost, the call dropped and they couldn't access us, we recorded the session to make sure that it's readily available after. I included information on how to get in touch with us in the chat box. We sent them an email after the session to make sure that we understand the technical difficulties, but you can still find the information here. And then students were requiring textbook access and other information sources. And what they would do, they would copy-paste. They wouldn't engage with the text. As much as we were teaching them or informing them on how to go about properly paraphrasing and quoting material. And the lecturers complained. And then when I was giving another training session with them, I asked them, what do you think plagiarism is? And then somebody said, no, me taking somebody else's quote is not plagiarism. I'm like, it is because it doesn't belong to you. As much as you take it, use it correctly in the right manner. That's what we're here for. So if you take the entire quote, state who is it from which publication. That's how you deal with information at an academic level, so that it's sound. Because if you do not reference it, you can't assume that your lecturer knows where this is coming from. You need to include the source. And also, what was evident, we needed to produce in-depth instructional teaching videos. Instead of saying, this is an EBSCO database, this is where you'll find materials on science, agri-science, and the like, we needed to be cognizant of the fact that we've got first-year students who are not aware of what we do as a library. Maybe some of them, they've never been inside the library, and now this is online. We need to take them to the web. Go to your browser, whether it be Google, Firefox, whichever one. Type in the library's home address. You wait for it, it will load. When you land on the page, you will find this block here, subject guides. Click on it. It's in chronological order. Go to your library guide, and exactly this is where you will gain access to EBSCOhost. That added value, because now, because the students were off campus, they were trying to Google on how to gain access to the library resources. So we needed to do in-depth instructional videos on how to gain access, so that even if it's 10 p.m. in the evening and they have a submission in 2 hours and they quickly want to reference something, they know how to go about to do it. And also we used social media to promote the training sessions that we had. Most of undergrad students, the young, between the ages of 18, 21, somewhere there. So they're in those spaces consistently. And even the government, when they were trying to disseminate information on how to keep safe during COVID, they were disseminating information in those platforms. So systematically, we use hashtags to group information, so that if somebody clicks on information literacy or SU libraries, all the content or information literacy or ESSU libraries, all the information curated, they can see it. And then that also increased because we would tag also, or also include a link to our lib guides, and we also saw that it pushed the stats up, which means that the students were paying attention to the content that we were actually pushing out, and they would even send us on social media platforms questions about on how to find certain specific information or how to reference certain specific information. And also, excuse me, the learning and teaching platforms. I just want to show you here. So most of our trainings were conducted on Teams and SunLearn. SunLearn is a Stellenbosch learning platform. And there were some webinars where the faculty would have them on Zoom and then would join them in. We needed to make sure that, as I said before, even though the university has provided access to Teams, a student might not be able to access Teams at the time of the training. There might be load shedding, of which it really did affect us. The student might not have connectivity at all. So what we did to reassure that the student will not miss out on the information session, at the start of each session, we'll tell them we will record the session. It will be made available to you via SunLearn. If you still struggle to find it on SunLearn, when you come back into Teams, we will not close this meeting. You will find all our chats are going to be here. We will still include the link here. The reason why we did that was to make it easier for the student to actually navigate and feel comfortable. No one learns when they are panicking. It's a fact of life. No one learns at all. I know it personally. The moment a student panics, they will not learn. And we're trying to make their lives as easy as possible so that as much as they are learning the skills from the library to become information literate, so that they take the skills and apply it at their course level in order for them to succeed. We didn't want them to ship and be anxious and all of these things. And as you can see up there, that's those are the social media posts we had. And there was a training on copyright issues and thesis dissertation, and that was targeted mainly for master students. Okay, gonna go back. What was also interesting was the digital literacy of us as librarians, as the information specialists. And I must say, it was surprising at the fast pace we were sharing information amongst each other to make our lives easier. And it was beautiful, because if somebody had a training session, they would just send a quick email, guys, I had a training session, it was this amount of people, you're gonna need this if it's longer than an hour, remember this. So it was tips about the actual platforms we were using, and also terms and forms of deliverance. And you'd find that if maybe one of us has a training session with a large group, then we would communicate with the other one. Hey, how did you do this? Like, hey, actually I'm available. Let me hop onto your training. I'll just manage this, you do that. So we collaborated beautifully to make sure we're still engaging at a quality level where we would face-to-face with the student, and the student didn't miss out on information and knowledge. And also, lastly, we needed, we needed to be very mindful of the digital literacy of our clients. There was a client of mine who was a judge. She was 50. She was doing her master's. When she grew up, she's not technologically savvy. She wasn't using PCs and the like. And in her job, she has a secretary who types and finds the information with her. She has researchers. But now, in her studying, she has to do this all herself. So when I had training sessions with her, I had to be empathetic, meet her at her level. Like, understand, this is what do we want from this session? You said you wanted to be able to find journals and case law. Okay, this is what we do in depth. Even if a student booked a session for like 30 minutes, and then you also manage your time wisely and check if there's something, if maybe you're open for the day. We continue with the session, even up to an hour, and record the session, even for one-on-one consultation, so that the client can be comfortable enough when they are good and ready or they forget something, they can go reference it again. It helps to instill the framework that as much as we disseminate the information, we're the drivers, we're the leaders, they must come in and learn from us, pick up, and also actually critically analyze, search, evaluate, and apply, and be able to use the information. Okay, so we're ready to show you this. Oh, and also we had, tying in with information literacy and addressing plagiarism, there were a lot of Tenet-in requests on how to analyze Tenet-in with the report, what does it mean, and how to better to structure wording and also referencing as well. And also what we did with the in-depth videos, they were done and they were posted onto the YouTube SU Libraries page. We uploaded the videos there and embed them on our library guides so that we make sure that they're always accessible. If maybe there's an error with the library guides, then we can just quickly have a link there and then still disseminate the information. And some trainings were also conducted via Adobe Captivate. Excuse me. In conclusion, I found this quote from Ali Reza, and he studies social sciences. And the quote goes, "A holistic approach to literacy is demanded to enhance metacognitive critical thinking abilities to consume information." Before actually the person can consume information, that's where we come in. Make sure that we understand, or we make them understand information literacy at their level, and also counter misleading or false narratives, of which we all know during COVID-19, fake news was skyrocketing. People sharing all sorts of unsolicited, incorrect information, and further comprehend the associated issues with the technology, such as bias, privacy, and security. And all of these are some of the elements that the other speakers alluded to or spoke about in the week. That as much as we look at information literacy and the framework, it goes broader to affect certain themes that are evident in the library field as it expands. And this I found interesting. I was looking at the 21st digital skills that are required for functional citizens to be able to cope in the current world, in the ever-changing world. And at the top, which is number one, it is information and information literacy. Being able to have storage and retrieval of information, data and digital content, evaluation of information and data and digital content, navigation, search, and filtering of information, data and digital content. And that's what we as librarians are responsible for. And at SU Libraries, that was done. Yes, there was not a satisfaction survey, but from the comments that we received, from the trainings that we conducted with the clients, the students, and also feedback from the lecturers, everybody was on board, everybody was happy. And from myself and Elizabeth, asibonge, enkosi. Thank you.